Hello, this is session 10 of SEPAC Summer School on SEPAC Self-Assessment. My name is Leslie, and I'm with the MassPAC project at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. And this is the last in a 10-part series on how to run a SEPAC, what's the role of the SEPAC, and some basic ways that SEPACs can be effective in their communities. The learning objectives for tonight are that I hope that you'll understand the relationship between family engagement and the work of SEPACs. This is something we've been talking about all summer on, how do we make SEPACs more effective? How can we engage more families in the work that SEPACs do? And how can the SEPACs have a greater voice within the community around the issues and concerns of families of children with special needs? I hope you'll be able to use some of the tools, the assessments that I'm going to share tonight to improve your practices. It's always kind of nice to constantly improve and constantly look back and see are what we're doing is effective in our communities, and is it answering the needs of our families. There is these Massachusetts Fundamentals, and it's a great tool, and I hope you'll be able to look at it and customize it to use in your community, or maybe work with your school district to use it in evaluating the programs and how you're doing family engagement in your school district. We'll talk about measuring outcomes and why that's important, and why making an action plan really gets the job done. It puts down in writing what you're going to do, and then you can share that with your decision-making bodies so that they can see that you've taken the steps to have a hypothesis, do the research, and follow through, and come forward with an outcome. So family engagement is a shared responsibility between the schools, between the community groups, between parents and families. And it's really helping the school district understand that families play a really important role in student learning. When families are involved, students do better. And so how can we make families a full partner in this whole process? Part of the decision-making, sitting on advisory committees, being really embedded in the work of a school district. If we share this whole commitment to family engagement, I think we'll have a more meaningful interaction between families, and we'll get better feedback because it'll be culturally diverse. It'll represent all of the voices within a community. So that regular two-way dialogue, which is the key point of family engagement, needs to happen. And that hopefully is something that the SEPAC will champion and practice with their school district. One of the tools that is available for SEPACs to kind of just see how they're doing, like an assessment tool, is available in the National SEPAC Guide. I have a link here on the slide. It's on page 66 and 67 of this booklet. It's something we've shared and talked about before, but at the end they have this really nice sample self-assessment. And I think this is something that should be completed by anyone who's working with the SEPAC, whether it's the special ed administrator, a school committee liaison person, a principal, and the SEPAC members themselves. And I think it'll give you a good sense of how you're doing and where some of the gaps are, where some of the issues and concerns are, and where maybe something that you just haven't had a chance to do yet, but it's highlighted in this assessment. It's available. You can, kind of just copy it or add, use it as a model to form your own questions. And this is something I think SEPAC should be doing at least annually, is kind of getting a sense of, is the work that they're doing meeting the needs of the families that they're working with? And this covers at least 10, 12 sections of areas where the SEPAC work should be defined and talked about and evaluated on an annual basis. So it's a very simple tool that you can copy, and you know, SEPACs a lot of times use some of the public types of platforms that are free. So this can be done in SurveyMonkey or in a Google Forms or in one of the free Microsoft kind of platforms to be able to get information digitally, and then you'll have, usually they automatically sort it out in terms of pie charts and numbers. And so you'll have some data to work from. So the other tool that I love is the Massachusetts Fundamentals. The partnership that happened several years ago, statewide, put together some guidelines for best practices around family engagement. And these are the precursor and the foundation for the new statewide family engagement framework. But this tool was developed to have schools assess how they were doing on family engagement. And I like the sections that they've laid out, so that these are some of the key elements that talk about how are we doing to really reach everyone within our community. So we're very welcoming to all stakeholders. There's effective communication. It's around supporting the success of students and children, advocating for those students, sharing power and responsibility, and partnerships within the community. And these are available on the state's website, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and you can download the document. Here's one page of the document. Oh, before that, there is a nice way for them to measure how things are going on in a community. The first tool I showed you had like strongly agree to strongly disagree, like a series of 1 to 5. This is more around, you know, where is the district or where is the SEPAC, if they were going to customize this tool for the SEPAC, you know, have you started it yet? Or are you just at the phase of initiating this type of practice? Middle level, are we progressing? Do we have a functional level of development and implementation? And then the third level is mastering. And you'll see in this, the first slide I have on welcoming all stakeholders, it really lays it out in kind of a descriptive form. So I think it's a very nice tool because you can kind of say, are we matching this language here? And it's like that any tool where you have a goal at the top, and then what are the indicators? You know, how do we break that down? What are the elements that make that goal successful? So the fundamental one, the goal is that you're creating a welcoming culture and environment for all families. So how do you do that? So those are the indicators on the left. You create a respectful atmosphere for stakeholders, you develop personal relationships, you provide opportunities for volunteering, and you ensure accessible programming by removing economic obstacles to participation. So that was defined within the state here as how you would welcome all stakeholders. Those are the indicators. And you can see that they've listed in paragraph or sentence form what that would really look like on an initiation kind of level, on a kind of, we've got this going, but we're not there yet, and then what it would really look like with best practices. How is it really embedded into our systems? How can this, you know, just happen organically, and then we don't have to work at it? And so you can use this tool, you know, welcoming all stakeholders to your SEPAC. And what would it look like if you just were starting it? And what would it look like, you know, as it's going along? And have you mastered that? And what does that look like? So this is a nice tool. And I think it shows that it's a developing process, and you can script it out. And you can work with your school district. You can work independently within the SEPAC. It's what you're assessing. And I think we talked about SEPAC self-assessment. So you can take this tool and modify it to reflect the work of the SEPAC and just kind of put this with a SEPAC focus on it. This goes through all 6 of those sections. This tool, and that's available on the district website, so you can kind of download it and edit it and make it work for your SEPAC, or write your own sections. So why were we measuring all these outcomes? It's really a way to assess that, have we achieved our results? You want to measure the effectiveness of your activities. What can be improved? You want to identify the things that are working well, that you'll continue, that you'll build on. And you want to identify those areas where maybe you need to change. Maybe it just wasn't effective. Maybe it sounded like a good idea, but putting it into practice, it didn't work. I also think that when you go through a self-assessment process, you're establishing some credibility. You're bringing forward information on your practices that you've assessed, you've gotten some feedback, you've done a continuous improvement cycle. I think that builds your credibility as a advisory board. And so when you come to the decision-making groups, you can talk about your evaluation process and your self-assessment process to demonstrate that your organization is growing and learning along the way. And I think it also helps you get some consensus around the purpose of your program. People start to understand what a SEPAC is all about and what it's really intended to achieve. And that's key, because I think it's kind of the best kept secret in a community. The role of the SEPAC, and how it can help families and how it can help a school district serve families better. So by measuring that and sharing the outcomes and sharing your evaluations, I think you get some buy-in from your community. I think you should be thinking these big picture questions all the time, because it drives the work that we do. What are you doing that's changing the lives of individuals, families, organizations, as a result of the work of the SEPAC? Has it really made a difference? And that's that annual report that you might be talking about to your school committee, is this is what we've done, and these are the outcomes, and here's where we're making a difference. Here's where we've, talked about inclusive practices, and here's where it was embedded in systems and in schools and in activities, and here's some outcomes. Are the lives of students and families better as a result of what you're doing? Sometimes it's a way for you to demonstrate that maybe we should be investing more in the activities and the work of the SEPAC, because there is demonstrated outcomes, because there is improvement, because there is student acceptance, and the inclusive types of activities that we want to see, and the benefit, so that all students are respected and valued in a community. So those are all the things that we're driving at, the big picture questions, and they help you as you go forward and start to continually plan, because it takes years to do this. It's not just a 1 year let's just do this and we're done. It's a long time. Making changes, it takes a lot of energy, effort, and it's slow. It's a progressive type of thing. So I always suggest, I'm a list maker, you've heard that before, that you document this action that you're going to be taking with an action plan. It's the core of our Apple conference, where we bring SEPACs together and talk about how they're going to increase family engagement in their community. And they leave with an action plan. It sets out what your goals are, breaks it down into steps, identifies who is going to be working on that, sets out some type of timeline when you're going to begin, when you're going to end. And it also has a statement of success, like what would it look like? What's the outcome that we're aiming for, and how are we going to reach that goal? And so that's something that you can present to a school committee to get some buy-in, to maybe get funding, to maybe get some additional types of resources. And it shows that you're organized. It shows that you've thought about it, you've laid it down, and you have a process. It may shift, it may change. We know things are changing daily in this current situation that we're in a pandemic, but at least it sets it out. It's like, here's our plan, and you plan your work and work your plan. And so an action plan is really bringing together a team to work on things. And I think it's the best practices when you're trying to make change. Keep a record. This is a nice tool that's just talks about, state your goal, break your steps down, identify who, begin, due date. Also talk about what are some of the resources that might be required to effectuate your plan. Do you need to have financial resources? Do you need to have access to buildings or other resources within the school district, staff, technology? And I also think you should consider some of the barriers that might crop up along the way, and anticipate this might be an issue. How would we deal with it? By documenting that, it kind of just puts you on notice that when this maybe arises, this is how we're going to handle it, or at least we kind of thought through some process of that. And we talk about defining what success looks like. So here's another tool that's very simple that you can use. It's an action plan. It's just setting yourself up to work in a more structured manner, and helps you kind of move along, especially if somebody happens to not all of a sudden be able to participate at the same level. You'll have a defined role and you'll be able to plug somebody new in there. Here's a sample action sheet from that National Advisory Guide, and they broke it down around a meeting agenda. And said, here's the agenda items that we had, and then talked about how they would move forward that agenda item. And so they're using an action plan as meeting minutes, which I think is a really unique idea. So that here's the agenda item, who brought it to the table, what was discussed, what are the notes about that? And then did we reach a decision on, would we take action about that? And then who would follow up? Because you always need somebody to do that work. And then, when would that task be completed? So here's a way of using meeting minutes as a kind of an action page, and record your work and what you're doing. So there's lots of ways to document this, and it's a tool that you can share. We know that you have to publish your minutes and make them available to anyone who asks. But I also think if you have the opportunity on a web page or somewhere, is to share the notes, the minutes of the action of the SEPAC, so that people can follow along as to what you're doing, what your priorities are, and your thought process. So this is talking about a little bit of summary of the discussions, so that you can see where the talk or the discussion went, and what it focused on, what were some of the high points of that discussion. So just to remember that change is good. It's difficult. It's hard to always be moving, different groups forward. We are in a SEPAC, there are volunteers. They have a lot of things going on in their lives as parents of children with special needs, so that it's difficult to do the work in a timely fashion. And I'm just always so amazed at the amount of work that SEPACs do with all of the challenges that these parents have. But they're the change that they wanted to see in a system. They're moving it forward, not only for their students that are currently in the school, but for students that are to come. That's what I think the wonderful role of SEPACs in our communities are. So that's the end of SEPAC Summer School. We'll have an evaluation for you to complete, and hopefully that you'll be able to continue to watch the videos that are available on the Federation's YouTube channel, so that you can go back and watch a session that you want to see again. Thank you very much.